You found us. What about this idea?
Gotta listen to this show. Why?
Because it's about the hearts and minds of entrepreneurs.
Oh, nailed it.
I didn't even look at the wall.
Nailed it.
I didn't even look at
All
the
right,
wall.
listen, honestly, this is a show. It's different than other shows about entrepreneurship.
It's real. It's real. Real stories.
Is it?
We tend to talk very real.
I love
And
it.
so do our guests. So come have fun with us.
I think you're ready.
I'm
All
ready.
right.
You ready?
We're doing it.
We're doing
We're
it.
doing it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to What About This Idea?
What about this idea?
I know. We're going to have to figure that out.
I
Everyone's
know.
like, would you just figure it out already?
No, it's building. It's growing.
Yeah, I mean, you don't come up with your signature way of saying the name of the show until second season, maybe? Is it 13 episodes in or something? I don't know.
I think it'll be way beyond that. You know, it's just an evolution. It's an evolution.
Yeah.
You know, I always feel like we should say it like we're sitting at a bar having a cocktail and I go, Sam, what about this idea?
Well, that's basically what it means.
I know.
That's
and
it.
I feel like that's the way we should say it.
It embodies the entrepreneurial spirit.
It
We
does.
both know that. And you know that we're sitting like 25 feet from a bar.
I know.
Yeah, like if we just teleported 25 feet that way, we'd be in a bar. We're going to teleport over there later, aren't we?
We are
Yeah.
going to teleport
All
over
right,
there
good.
later. There's no meat raffle tonight, though. So, and we can't mention their name because they are not yet a sponsor, but maybe in the future.
I mean, we could just mention you might want to be a sponsor, Dusty's. Oh, wow, sorry. Anyway,
Dusty's.
should we do this? Should we introduce the show and get going? And
I would
we've got
love
a
to.
guest. Yeah. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to What About This Idea? It's a great show. We've got a guest today. Let's do it.
We're excited about this guest. This is.
Oh, we're gonna learn some shit.
I just feel like, you know, you've always tipped me up to be the smart one on this podcast, and I think
that's
that our
fair.
listeners know for sure that's not true.
I think that's pretty
But
true.
now we have Mike here,
I know.
and I'm thinking that really just kind of buries any kind of intelligence I could have brought to the table.
Well, hello, Mike.
Hello.
How are you?
I don't know what to do with that intro.
Well, so here's the deal. We have had. Is someone?
I'm Red.
You're Red? Yeah. Okay. We have had guests. Whatever. This is never going to work. The video on this. It's fine. We'll have something. You can watch whatever we've got. We've had guests on, and they've been very intelligent too. So we don't want to, insult any of our past guests. But what we did realize early on is that we don't know for sure. We're fairly certain that the word entrepreneur is a French word.
That was going to be my first question.
Oh, I want you to go with it.
What?
Then.
That was going to be my first
Get it.
question.
Get
I'm
after
so
it.
excited to find out because we have been wrestling with this. We decided it must be French, right? Entrepreneur.
We.
Yeah,
We, like, yeah.
No. He's saying.
Oh, oui.
You are correct.
Tell me more.
Because you're a professor. So
Yeah.
we're going to get the dictionary. Well, whatever's in your head. We want to know.
I once asked one of my French friends, what's the French word for entrepreneur? And they laughed. So I assume you're correct.
That's fair. That's a nice way to find out for sure it's French. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad to be here and to help you get this kicked off.
Yeah.
We live in one of the great entrepreneurial ecosystems in the world. I absolutely love Greater Minnesota entrepreneur ecosystem. I love what we're doing here in the Twin Cities. I think we've got a lot of great players.
I like to hear
and I've
this.
had a chance to hang out with a whole bunch of them. We're so execution forward here. And I think that's what it takes to be a good entrepreneur is to stop planning and start doing. And I'm just always amazed at all the things that I see popping up around here, and everything from hats to mittens to food products to new whiskeys and you name it. It's fun.
That's right. Well, tell us if you were given, and I'm about to do this for you, if you were given just an open space to introduce yourself, how would you start? Because when I asked you that when you first came in here, I thought we could take the whole show.
It's hard to do it in 60 seconds or less. First and foremost, I was a broadcaster in my life. Eventually working my way up through the radio dial and owning my own radio station down in Mankato, and eventually taking over my father's radio station down in Austin, Minnesota. And that was kind of my early career, my early dream. What did I want to be when I grew up? Own radio stations. And I was able to sell those radio stations when I was just about 35 years old. We sold them in the year 2000. And along that journey, I'd started 4 .coms because that seemed to be the thing to do in the 90s. 3 of them failed miserably. It
burst in the .com bubble, did they?
No, they all could have been successful. I just couldn't come up with a business plan. But the 4th, I was one of the first players in the online automobile space. So I went to 6 car dealers in one day and basically asked them, you spent $500 on stupider things than this, and they all agreed with me, and I started a company. And
That's a nice way to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sell it before you build it. That's I didn't know how smart I was back then, but that really led the way, and that grew into a very, very large company. We were, I think, doing business in 20 some odd states, and newspaper publishers and publishing magazines and reverse print and doing a lot of back end work.
Do you mind me asking what the name of that company was?
We started as MinnesotaCars.com because nobody defined their .com bigger than their geography because I wasn't that smart. But it became AutoConnects. I bought the software company that was my vendor to build my software, and so brought them in-house and launched nationwide. And we sold that to Car Truck Trader in 2006.
Okay. I was wondering about Auto Trader.
Yeah. So that
they were kind of the big player.
Yeah,
for a long time.
And a lot of times that's why you exit businesses. You really find out that somebody else's net present value is much bigger than yours. Like why did we sell radio stations? At the late 90s, you either were going to be growing or you're going to get grown over. You woke up one day and you're competing against 11 clear channel radio stations, and the writing was on the wall.
You can't just fight the good fight.
Yeah. And
I love how we're starting with the exit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I would do. I'd see the thing burn to the ground first. Like, I'm going to win.
Yeah. Everybody wants to, and you always run your businesses like you're going to own them forever, and you nurture them and you do all the right things. But yeah, know when it's time to take your cards off the table. And my counsel to people is, are you learning anything anymore?
Well, how did you get from all of this to professorial work?
And I still don't feel like you fully gave us a definition of the word entrepreneur.
I think we're just going to leave it a mystery.
Is it going to just be a mystery? It's French. We can go with that.
We'll get to that. So the transition period was interesting. So I was asked to teach some undergrad entrepreneurship classes for Rasmussen Business College and Minnesota State University, Mankato. Right about this time that I decided to sell the companies, and my wife and I lived outside the country for the better part of 2 years. So I'd keep coming back and forth. But I'd had that little itch, like, oh, wow, teaching's kind of cool. And so I went off and I got my degree from Melbourne, Australia. I studied in China. I studied at Kellogg in Chicago, studied in Germany and Slovakia, and ended up graduating from Melbourne, Australia. And, at the end of this degree, what I learned was that all these CEOs and these amazing students, I was the only American in the program, they ran great big companies. And they all wanted to be an entrepreneur like me. And at that time, maybe I thought, maybe it's time for me to transition into a corporate life. And what I learned out of there is, of all the people that I went to school with, I want to be most like the professors in front of the room.
Sure.
Like these really amazing professors. So I always pursued teaching, never at a full-time level, but I always taught something. So for 17 years, I've taught the MBA Executive Leadership Series for MSU, and I've had over 100 C-suite guests come into the classroom. The CEO of United Health Group talked to 16 of my students for an hour and a half. I've had the CEO of U.S. Bank. This coming semester, we have Patrick Joyce, who's the Chief Security Officer of Medtronic. We've had Dan and Angie come in several times as guests of Boom Chicka Pop. Kieran has been a guest of ours. So a wide variety of entrepreneurs and corporate leaders, and that's been a wonderful education. And so really just doing this, just basically hosting them.
Well, I think you've said a lot of things already that need to get delved into just a little bit. So I kind of like to take it for the team here, and I think of our audience, and I think of someone who maybe doesn't understand what all of these terms are, what it all means, right? And you said something. You said that you were asked to teach. How does that happen?
Well, you own a business in town, and one of the things I truly believe in is you give back. And so I was campaign chair of the United Way. I sat on the board of the YMCA. So you get to know not only other business leaders, but the leadership at the university.
Right.
And so when they were looking for somebody to co-teach an entrepreneurship class, why not bring in a business person? So yeah. I don't have a PhD. I so respect the people who do, because they are incredibly smart and well knowledged. So I hope that I can just kind of fill in some of the color, the fill in the blank, real world experience kind of stuff.
Well, and there's different there's different things that you need to know. So entrepreneurship, my understanding of it, and we get into this on the show, is, you mentioned something about these CEOs and the C-suite level people aren't necessarily entrepreneurs, and they aren't necessarily entrepreneurial and thinkers, really.
So fast forward a little bit, I did do 4 years in corporate America. I worked for United Health Group as an entrepreneur in residence. So I dealt with C-suite people at the leadership level trying to sell innovation and new business ideas. And there's a Harvard Business Review quote that says, entrepreneurship within a large organization is indistinguishable from insubordination. And
I love that.
I have that article somewhere saved. Bless United Health Group for committing to innovation like they do. So they well fund disruptive innovation within their own organization.
When you say well fund, that suddenly doesn't seem super entrepreneurial.
well, money's got to come from somewhere. So they set aside a lot of money, and they created, in the early days it was called the Garage, and they created this really group of talented innovators, digital technology specialists, marketers, architects, all these people, and put them in a room with whiteboards and beanbags and said, go out and break healthcare. And some amazing talent, amazing products came up through that. And then over the years, it evolves as corporate innovation does. So when I was offered to teach corporate innovation in the spring of 2019, so right before COVID, and I was going to start to co-teach some courses in innovation for Carlson and entrepreneurship. And over the course of the summer, the professor that I was going to co-teach with was diagnosed with cancer. Mm. Oh. And so that accelerated my path into the university lifestyle.
Yeah. Are you loving it?
I do. I love the energy of students. I hate grading. I apologize to all my students. I know I'm lousy at it. But other than that, and that first year, I got to lead a course in innovation that we took the students to Brazil for 2 weeks, and we studied innovation that was going on in and around Brazil. And then I taught a full semester entrepreneurship course where we spent a week in Cuba and working with those entrepreneurs and talk about building something with scarce resources.
Yeah.
The entrepreneurs we met in Cuba are just amazing, and really saw that aha moment, that transformational moment happen for a lot of those students. We were in Cuba when COVID broke out.
Concerned you wouldn't get back.
I think we're the second to the last Delta flight off the island for a couple years, so that was exciting. Yeah. But I now get to teach entrepreneurship, both at the master's level, but more often at the undergrad level, and really try to challenge the students to come up with a breakable and testable idea within 12 weeks. So this isn't long-term product development. And Carlson does have advanced entrepreneurship courses in where you do get to spend time over a year or even longer to develop your idea. But the first brush with entrepreneurship is, sell something to somebody pretty darn fast.
Right.
Get that initial feedback. Test your assumptions.
And these are like college age students. Are they graduate age students?
Most are college age. From the neat thing about the introductory course that I taught, not the master's course that I taught, the introductory is across the whole campus. So I have engineering students, I have art students, and you see the teams that they build.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I've done some teaching. I taught for about 10 years in technology, and I didn't have an entrepreneur class, but I had a class that required them to be very creative. And you bring kids into the classroom and you put them in that structured environment from the industrial age, how we created that environment. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly not the best way to learn. And then they get their heads into, I'm going to learn in this format that doesn't actually work. And then you pop them into an entrepreneur class and it's this balance between actually following the format in which you're teaching and also opening up the environment for them to think outside the box and experiment and make mistakes, and they don't have to be right. There's not a right answer, sort of thing. I can imagine you coming in as a practitioner really creates a better environment there because you're not following this.
That's the problems I always had with school, was like I couldn't conform.
And first of all, I'm not the best entrepreneurship teacher at Carlson by any means. There's some really amazing people there. I just kind of try to do what I do. And every class I teach gets a little better, and then I'm still on my learning journey on how to do this right.
Do you think you're kind of an entrepreneur yourself, Mike? So I'm thinking there's not an end game here.
I just like it, and I just say yes to a lot of things. I was the second.
Hence him sitting here.
I was the second and fifth Jersey Mike's franchisee in the state of Minnesota.
Second and fifth.
Yeah, so we opened a second store. So we opened the second store in Minnesota and the fifth store in Minnesota.
I like it.
And I sold those during COVID. But my partner is amazing in that, and he was able to. We were able to set him up with the better financial partner to take those southern Minnesota stores where they needed to go. Yep. So I was just so happy, and I learned a lot about running restaurants. And I knew a lot of theoretical things about running restaurants, and now I know all the non-theoretical things.
Yeah. Well, I think that is the ultimate entrepreneurial ground, right? Because you will run out of money.
Oh, I mean, they're always running on a...
have to serve tables. You will have to run out and get lettuce. I mean, it's the ultimate, I can pivot at any moment business.
Yeah, I think the only original insight I've ever had on entrepreneurship, because I just haven't seen anybody else say these words, there's only two reasons why businesses go out of business, why they fail. They grow too slow or they grow too fast. So the trick is to keep it somewhere in the middle.
So scary. That's so let me ask you this, now that you brought that up. You advise a lot of entrepreneurs. You teach kids about entrepreneurial thinking. You are an entrepreneur. I can imagine that you have built a muscle around what you kind of expect there to be the trip of that entrepreneur. So what is the first thing that you listen to with an entrepreneur, and you've got that, I know what it is, I know what they're going to say, I know what they're struggling with?
It's idea versus, I don't want to say testing because that's too hard of a word, but there are so many that are just so thrilled with the idea. They think they've come up with a precious little unique gem that they're going to patent, protect, and own the world, and that happens almost never.
Yeah.
It's just doesn't work that way. All the great businesses aren't protected by patents. They really aren't. They kind of get patents along the way, but if Apple couldn't stop Google from creating a look-alike phone, what hopes do you have? It's better to create something and sell it to somebody and see if they love it. And if they love it, do they tell other people about it? And from there, that's how you build a really great business. At the same time, staying true to some semblance of a strategy. Another reason why businesses don't do well is they get diluted. They start saying yes to the wrong customers, listening to the wrong customers.
So we're adding another reason then.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Because you said there were two reasons.
Well, sure. Like I said, I'm not the best entrepreneurship teacher.
No, I love it though.
I might not be the best entrepreneurship teacher in the room.
Well, let's break that down just a little bit, right? Because this is something that I would like to figure out on this show a little more. And then we've got you here, and maybe you can help with it. But the person who, starts their own little construction company, or opens a restaurant, or opens a nail salon. So Andrea Storley is going to come in on the show sometime, right? People like that who sort of accidentally fall into entrepreneurship, they're not going to go to Carlson School of Business and get a course to teach them how to do it, right? They didn't come to it from that direction. So it's not that I don't want everything to fall under the entrepreneurship blanket, but it's like business owner is not necessarily someone who thought about entrepreneurship in any way. Person within a company who's driving to change that company or something is entrepreneurial in their thinking, and maybe learned from you, and they get in there and try and do that, right? Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. It's usually you start a business because you're really good at something.
Yes, you're good at the thing that this is a problem.
My wife is
So you don't start a business because you can hardly wait to deal with taxes and labor.
Right. Well, and you can be so
financials.
good at things. You're so good at it. You think that your business is going to be great. You start a business and you find out you're not that great at running a business, right? Is that where you're headed with that?
Yeah, and that's why I think one of the things we teach entrepreneurs is that this is a team sport. We have this myth in the United States of the solo entrepreneur, and we just like to think that way. You know, Steve Jobs did have
solopreneur. He's got it.
Right?
He had, what's his name? Wozniak or whatever his name.
Everybody has a lot of somebodies. And how to think like an entrepreneurial team, and how to avoid the trap of these assumptions kind of becoming gospel. Where, when you first make up your business plan, you got this, hey, I got this great idea and I'm going to sell to these kind of customers and they're going to pay me this much money for it and I'm going to reach them this way and then I'm going to have these people help me do it and then this is what we're going to do and that's going to cost me this and I get all the money left over. So that's basic business planning.
That's not how it goes?
That's a business plan 101. And
I like you went through that really quick.
Everything's a wild ass guess. So I draw this big chart and I start with WAG on one side, wild ass guess, and the truth on the other side. And, everything's a journey. You start with a wild ass guess and we advance to a SWAG. Do you know what that stands for? That's a
super
scientific wild ass guess.
Scientific.
So at least you've done something. You've measured something. You've done something to kind of hone in on this. But as soon as you sell something to somebody, the lights really start to go off. And I love the food truck movement here.
Ooh, I
right?
do too.
We're right down for the 1029 bar, right? So that was Smack Shack starts as a food truck. They need to have a commercial kitchen. They approach 1029 bar. They say, hey, let's run your kitchen for you. Josh Stoma, I think is his name.
Sure.
He once took me back and we went out with Chef Riebel and went out and toured all of his kitchens. And, he's now, in airports and in different locations, but it all started with this minimum viable product of making people a lobster roll out of a food truck.
It always pissed me off that Minnesota doesn't have like street vendors selling food on the street, like you go, like even a hot dog stand.
Yeah, it's and as a guy who invested $500,000 in a building out a Jersey Mike's restaurant, I would have gotten upset if a sub cart got put out in front of my restaurant. So I understand both sides of that argument.
I get it. Right? But I lived out in Colorado for a while, and at the end of a night, you'd walk down the street and there's the pita, or not pita, but Euro stand.
So how do we create an ecosystem like we have in Minnesota that balances those two things? That we want to encourage the young startups that aren't capital intensive, but we also don't want to, at the same time, penalize those who have built our infrastructure and pay those kind of taxes.
Totally.
And
what do you think the biggest? I used to. Okay, I'm gonna tell you a story about something I've done. I used to do a lot of work in a previous company that I had about building entrepreneurial communities. And there'd be this list of things you do in a community to inspire entrepreneurs, right? You'd have maybe an incubator area. You'd have good funding for them. You'd have good mentoring. You'd have all those things, right? There's this checklist that often would be created for communities to be entrepreneurs. But the fact was that communities would have the same thing in each of the communities, and one would be wildly entrepreneurial and the other wouldn't be, right? And it really came down to the catalysts, the things that, what did you do if you were a junior in high school and you said to your teacher, I want to be an entrepreneur. I think I want to build these things.
Said no
right?
junior in high school ever, right?
Well, maybe.
No, but I'm just saying because it's so hard to even know what that means. But
Well, the
yes, I'm with
system
you.
doesn't support that, but systems that did support it created entrepreneurs, right? So if that wasn't a crazy question in the community, that tended to create a very entrepreneurial community, right? It's this catalyst, this mental state. How would you see that?
I think that's a great way to look at it. The vibe, and I'll do you one better. So I've traveled now to 30 some odd countries, and the entrepreneurial environment of the United States is very different than the entrepreneurial environment around the world. And I remember I got asked to teach in Germany an entrepreneurship class, so I went and taught it over the summer to these wonderful master's students, and I was talking about bankruptcy just kind of casually, just kind of, the concept of bankruptcy, and one of the students raised their hands and say, in Eastern Europe, we don't have that. I'm like, what do you mean? You go to jail. You borrow money from somebody, you don't pay them back, you go to jail. Like, what?
That used to
Talk
be the
about
case
like a
here, right?
core entrepreneurial value we have in this country is, hey, you can try, and then if things screw up, you go bankrupt and you get to stiff your creditors and not go to jail. In some countries, you pass your debts down to your grandchildren.
Oh, right. Yeah. Scary.
Yeah, 100-year
why we're
mortgage.
so in debt.
So again, I ran that small business center for the university down in Mankato, and my counterpart here in the Twin Cities had about the same budget, but needed to serve 3 million people rather than 300,000 people in the region. So the St. Thomas Small Business Center hyper-focuses their activities, where I did I was pretty broad. I helped everybody from new startups to businesses looking to acquire $50 million of funding and everybody in between. The Small Business Development Center at St. Thomas focuses on pre-venture education, and then they support capital acquisition really well. And I haven't talked to the folks over there in a while, so I don't want to speak to them, but an amazing resource in this community. But again, because there are other resources out there that play a different role in that ecosystem. And I think Twin Cities is great because this entrepreneurial ecosystem keeps regrowing and redeveloping and
I think it's alive and well here.
Yeah, it's really great.
But it's hard to put your finger on it, and that's what I mean. Even the way you said that, like it's hard to put your finger on it. What is the catalyst, right? What is
it's people expecting and being okay with someone asking, "What about this idea?" Though I mean,
what about this idea?
To bring it back.
Well,
way
that's what
to
I was
bring it
thinking when
back.
you're talking about the junior in high school. Like that's what that kid is going to ask. Hey, what about this idea?
And I love, so it's a great title of a podcast.
Well, thanks.
Well, we should do that.
And yeah, you probably should
start a show on that.
Sorry, I just got the trademark on it. The next question is now what? How do you take it from idea to execution? And we used to teach this really poorly. So the first time I ever taught entrepreneurship, 100 level class was we had a big thick textbook, and then your deliverable at the end was a, half a ream of paper bound with your bound business plan.
Oh God.
And
I would have flunked out.
As a guy who's created quite a few businesses and exit, I never once had a document. Now, one of my mentees, Megan, who runs Expression Med, who should be one of your guests. She's just amazing.
We always love guest recommendations.
She's amazing. She loves business plans. So she and I argue. We flip roles. She takes the professor's role. I love business planning. I don't care whether it exists on a whiteboard. I don't care if it exists on Post-it notes. I don't care the format of your business plan. But you should be constantly in the business planning, testing your execution, pay attention to the metrics that matter. And there's no one place to do it. But hey, what about this idea? Great. What's that next step? What are your riskiest assumptions? And I think human nature is to go after the easiest things.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't want to test the hard things. It's so much more pleasant to be successful in your testing your hypothesis than it is to screw up. But go test your riskiest ones first.
You reminded me of a little story. Years ago, we bought the equipment to start a little test batch brewery at my dad's house, and it's like one of the nicest little home brew, things in the state, I'm sure. Spent some good money on it, but I visited Bent Paddle, which was just starting up at the time, and you have to apply for your brewer's notice, and it's a federal application, and it's big and thick, and there's a lot of stuff in there. And the gal who was running it, I forget her name, but anyway, she very proudly showed me how she had filled out every single part of it, and it was a beautifully constructed business plan with a beautifully filled out brewer's notice for the federal government. Anyway, I went down to Virginia and visited a different brewery, and this guy was like exactly the opposite. He said, they say you can't open a brewery if you've had a felony, but yeah, I did, and I asked if I could see his brewer's notice. Every single answer was one word. Do you have security? Yes.
Yeah.
If so, what kind of security? Lock. And he spent like 15 minutes. She spent 6 months. They both got their
Yep.
And they were both hyper entrepreneurial, but they came at it from different directions.
Yeah, at the university level, we call that C's get degrees. Yeah. And nowhere on your diploma does it say your grade point average. So
right. Yeah, he was more of a D will work too.
Yeah, whatever
D
gets
for
you across
done.
that finish line.
I was told that once in college.
D for done.
Yeah, I'm giving you a D for done.
And regulations are interesting. My wife's company is we're not quite there yet, but we're about to pass the 50 employee FTE full-time equivalent mark, which brings on a whole nother layer of
governance,
compliance reports, regulation. And my wife, being a fabulous psychologist, doesn't want to do any of that.
No.
So it's falling on yours truly to go and
luckily
build a team. Find someone else.
You've done this.
Yeah,
before.
we're building and we're building an amazing leadership team for her. And growing up as a company, I think one of the things that you have to talk about with execution is, how do we transition from a company of experts to a company of expert processes?
Yep.
And you're going to do it here with this podcast, so I'm like the fourth or fifth guest, I guess. But when you're into the 400th guest, you will have a process lined up. You're going to.
Juliet is a process gal.
I am kind of a process girl, but I try and resist because Sam is really good at spontaneity. And I'm learning to be spontaneous.
Yeah, I mean, my hope for the show, and we'll take our first break here, or our only break. But my hope for the show is that all different levels of people interested in what, it could be business ownership, it could be starting something brand new, it could be all types of different entrepreneurial thinking, might get something out of it. So Mike, you're doing good. I mean,
He's a
this
wealth
is the
of
most
knowledge.
professorial guest we've had.
Well, plus he's
before.
been on the radio, so I'm excited to see how he would say, "What about this idea?"
What about this idea?
And I did work through it one time. I said I did it for you one time, and I put the emphasis on different parts of it, and you can get different questions out of that. So, but we're not going to do it.
We'll be right back with What About This Idea? More after this.
I love it. Thanks.
Here you are.
Oh,
You've made it to the middle of the show. Buckle up, because the second half is going to be even.
It's different.
It's
It's
very
always
different.
different. Things the little train goes off the rails or whatever. The whole
It does.
bus.
It usually does. By the second half, we're relaxed.
It's coming.
Here it comes.
Yeah. I talk too much. Middle. See ya.
Bye.
Have fun. All right, we're back for the second half.
I think we should have our guest say the name.
I do too.
What about this idea?
Ooh, it's getting more fun.
Yeah.
Today's contestants are
That's about
Well,
it.
at least you fully get the spirit of what we're going for.
well, and I tell my students this, that I kind of see teaching as being a game show host. I introduce the contestants, I hand out valuable points, but that's about how I treat teaching. I try to be entertaining for 45 minutes or so, and then group work.
What do you think? I have to ask you, what do you think the biggest mental blocks are for entrepreneurs? Like, you know, when people come to you and they're like, I'm having that issue, like, what do they say? I mean, is it just they don't believe in themselves?
They shoot for perfection before launch. That is, and it's not really a mental block. It's this quest for, it's not quite done yet. It has to be absolutely perfect. I'm not going to open up my restaurant until I've spent $600,000 in painting walls.
I hear this
building
one all the
porches,
time.
and buying, doing all this, rather than making it in your kitchen and go serving it to friends and saying, what do you think?
Yeah.
And then would you hire me to come and give this food to your friends, and then enough money to buy a food truck or
Heather Asbury, she's got Heather's in South Minneapolis. She was catering forever. She was in restaurants, but she's not a chef. She's not.
Yep.
But she knew she had a good product before she opened that store.
And it takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Of course.
It takes hard work, but the people who get to it fastest, and some things do have to be perfect. By the way, if your goal is to become a dentist, be a good dentist before you start drilling teeth. I'm just saying.
Go to school. Learn to be a dentist.
If you have a product design, one of my favorite things that's really, I don't want to say it's brand new by any means, but it was new to me, this idea of creating landing pages and digital advertising as testing platforms. And this is extremely powerful. We used it at the corporate level, United Health Group. I've had innovators from General Mills come in and present to the class.
Explain that to me in detail, would you? I don't know what that means.
You don't have to build. So let's say, I'll give you a little fiction here.
Yeah.
I've got a new idea for a protein supplement.
Okay, so this is
I'm just making this up.
But I do have one point of clarification. Yeah. Does it have to be a physical widget?
Nope. Could be. I have this idea for a software product you download on your cell phone, and it does this, that, and the other thing.
Okay.
So it can be digital, can be real. You don't even have to build it. What you have to do is build a landing page, so some place on the internet that explains your value proposition, and at the bottom of the page, you say, to find out more, enter your email address here, or enter your mobile phone number here. Mm-hmm. And this has been used by major corporations here, where they, if I'm trying to do a protein bar based on Count Chocula cereal, the riskiest assumption isn't that I can't take Count Chocula cereal and make a protein bar. The food scientists know how to do that.
Right.
That wouldn't be a risky assumption for General Mills, but do we know
Does anyone
do the
want it?
customers want it? So now I
get it.
run a couple $100 a week of Facebook ads. Are they commented on? Are they shared? Are they liked? And then when people click on the Facebook ad, they go to this landing page, and do people click on it and give you their information at the bottom of it and say, hey, send me more information? And you can test different value propositions, and you can test different landing pages and price points for hundreds of dollars, not tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay, but there's two parts to that, right? So you've got to get the landing page built. I get that. It's relatively easy these days to get a website built to do that sort of stuff. And you've got to pay the advertising, because I think this is another mistake that entrepreneurs or people wishing to start a business but not knowing kind of what the first steps are. There's a shyness, or there can be a shyness, where they've got the great idea, they're really good at the thing they're doing, but they get all set up, they get all their little blocks and everything's ready, and then they don't tell anyone.
Yep.
No one knows. And then they're like, oh shit, why is my business failing? Like, well, it's not actually. It's not. No one even knows it exists. It can't fail if no one knows it exists.
Even worse is then they go on sale. They knock 20% off all the price, so that the people who happen to find them now get a discount. So are paying them even less money.
That's a good point. Don't discount your shit.
Yeah, a lot of people throw parties and then forget to send out the invite.
Or your product.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're throwing a party and not sending out an invitation.
Right. That is what it is.
I used to sell radio advertising, so this is yes. You have to commit to the advertising, but from a testing standpoint, the digital mediums are so designed and built, and there are actually .coms out there that will help you build these campaigns if you want, but. They're not that hard to do. We have students do them all the time.
You're totally full of information here, though.
Yeah.
What .coms?
Well, because the thing is, this is something that people starting out here. Oh, there's all these places that do this stuff, right? But it feels like a predatory landscape.
Exactly.
It does, because you look around and you're like, oh my God, I even mentioned the fact that I have an idea, and now 60 different people are emailing me. I've got onto some list somewhere. Yeah. They all seem to know exactly what it is I'm looking to do, and they're all trying to sell me something. Yeah. And how do they wade through that? Like what do they do?
I've never understood the business model of trying to sell something to non-successful entrepreneurs. It seems like you'd make so much more money selling to people who are already successful. They
fair
hiring people to do things for you is another. You got to do it at least once yourself. You got to spend a few months in QuickBooks, and then you can go out and hire a bookkeeper to do it for you. But you got to know.
Same philosophy. I have the same. I just said that to my business partner. I'm like, I get that we need a bookkeeper, but I need to know. How to bookkeep, right? I need to know.
You can't just pass it off on day one.
Exactly. I need to know this marketing strategy. Like, where are we going with this so that I can be a part of it, right? Yeah. I need to know the systems of what you're doing and what I'm doing.
And we saw that, especially with the early Kickstarters and all those websites, where what you're really doing is selling the value proposition, just testing for interest before you build the product. But we can do that without going on Kickstarter. We can do that for a very small amount of money. And you're not even promising to deliver this to them. You're just measuring the traffic through the website. And if it's successful, you'll end up with the email address of 20 or 50 people who want to buy your product.
Okay, that answers another question. Is 20 or 50 people success? Is that good enough to feel like you've because I feel like it is.
There's a book called 0 to 1. One's the hard number. Let's get to 1 first before we worry about what.
No, I mean, this is the third show that I'm doing, and I love this show. And I've got a couple other shows, and at one point I realized, like, I didn't know when you get past 1,000 or 5,000 or even 10,000 subscribers, you've got something you should be making money off of. Yeah. And I have that. And we're going to have more than that with this show because it's a good show.
Is it, though?
It is. Well, I mean, I think, you know what? The measure of a good show is how often the hosts say it's a good show.
Oh, okay.
Like,
This
for sure.
is a good show. This is a really, really good show.
Well, given the quality of the guest today, it can't go anywhere.
No.
Where's your drum roll?
Boom, boom.
Okay.
Boom. Yeah, wait, I have that.
I know. That's what I was
hold
thinking.
on a
Push
second.
the button.
Wait.
Push
I'll
not
get
really good timing experts here.
Oh, you can't hear it because I don't have it on. Ready?
Okay.
We'll edit.
Timing is everything.
No, that was
Timing is
perfect timing.
everything.
That was the
Edit that in
best
post.
comedic timing ever. It took forever for us to get.
Do you think that a kid who starts a lemonade stand and sells...
Oh, God, support the kids. I love this.
I know. I knew you'd like it that I brought up kids.
I love
He's very partial to kids, and we should dive into that sometime because I think that it's the innocence, right? It's that you haven't stolen their creativity, right?
They're just like, you know what? This is the best fucking lemonade stand ever. They get so into it. And
they do.
And they sit there for hours.
I was at one.
And they take Venmo now.
And
they Venmo. I saw that. And what a brilliant thing, because I'm not going to give you just 20 cents. I'm not going to give you a quarter on Venmo. I'm going to give you like $5-10 because you're entrepreneurial. Do you think that kind of practice is really important?
Absolutely. I hear this story, and I did it myself. I don't know when I even started working. I found a business card. My mom saved it. It's Mike Nolan, Magic and Clowns.
Oh, yeah.
So
beautiful.
I think when I was in 4th or 5th grade, my mom put me in magic camp and flute lessons because she knew I was heading for popularity.
Yeah. That's a recipe for you're a chick magnet.
I know. Yeah.
He knows a puppy and a baby, and everybody's going to love you.
Flute and magic are not quite as... Puppies are well, anyway.
But going out and hustling, getting paid $20 to go to a kid's birthday party.
Love it.
That's what I was doing.
And how old were you, roughly?
I don't know. What are you in 5th grade? 10, 12, 13.
You're 10.
That, yeah.
Look at you now, and look what you've become,
and
Mike.
Someone would pay you to go. I mean, honestly, I love that kind of thing because that's the weird shit I would have been doing as a kid too. Like, well, what can I do to make some money? And I would go and entertain people and do things and get paid a little bit here and there. Like, but that is formative, isn't it?
It's and somehow we pass it along to our kids. All my children started jobs at 14 and 15. And
are they entrepreneurs now?
None of them.
No, that's fair though.
But that's okay.
But they saw the hardship probably.
But again, they're going to do it someday.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I do. I think I shouldn't say none of them. My middle son is a photographer, and his side gig is he does cosplay photography. So he started doing this.
Explain this to me. I'm sorry.
There's a whole world of people who like to
cosplay. What is that?
It's
why am I so out of
Halloween,
touch with everything?
350
is that
days
short for costume?
Yeah, costume.
Oh shit.
Yeah, but it's more of a culture.
Yeah, it's a culture.
Yeah.
It's a vibe, and he started doing it for free. Especially focusing on people of color during COVID is just a way to kind of give back to the community and his friends that he hung out with. And it kind of grew from there. And now he has paid gigs at all the conventions that come to town. They pay him. He'll lead courses. He does photo shoots. CharlesNolanDigital.com if you're looking for it.
Oh, nice.
Give a little plug.
Yeah, shout out from
so he is entrepreneurial. And he... and of all of them, but it's the work ethic I think you develop in these early entrepreneurship ventures, and failing is okay. And
it's an essential part of it.
And you try not to bet the whole farm every time. You learn to.
It's more than okay. I mean, it's essential. You have to know how to get back up again. You have to know that you have to know enough. You have to be objective enough to see the lesson.
Yeah.
To see, and the lessons will just continue to give, right?
But in
I've
the early
failed
days-
so many times.
Right.
Look how successful I am.
Well,
I must be, right?
You've proven yourself worthy. But in the early days, so like if you're thinking of what, like, let's say, because we're big with the kids. So let's say we've got, all our 14-year-old listeners, because you know how the kids love podcasts done by old people like us.
They're really into them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, but if you're that kid, like, so that's one of the reasons why kids are so awesome, because they are less averse to the fear of failure, right? But they also, like, kids are funny because one little thing happens and it can change the entire course of their life. So they can fail in a way, or have a parent or an adult say something to them that offends them or hurts them, and they're like, okay, I'm never doing that again because that hurt. Like, I'm not going to go. My neighbors didn't like my lemonade stand or something, so I'm never going to put myself out there that way again.
Well, and one of the beautiful things of living in the country we live in, the penalty for failure is not that great here.
I like that. The sound of that.
Like you're working with a net.
Yeah, true.
I ran into a great article once. Dharmesh Shah, who is the co-founder of HubSpot, he has a blog called On Startups, and a long, long time ago he wrote why young people make the best entrepreneurs. And one of his point was, you have zero net worth. Like you're not risking anything.
There's no risk, right? You're not supporting a family or paying a mortgage or,
Once you get into your 40s and 50s, starting a restaurant is scary because you sign a personal guarantee and they'll come and take away everything that you had.
Yeah.
Aware
about.
I think young people, it's and also, young people, especially in college. So let's advance from 14 and we'll
let's
get
go
into college. You'll never have an opportunity to hang around more diverse, more cool, more people with that wonderful mindset ever again in your life.
It's totally like this.
Open to it.
Yeah,
and you sit around and you talk for hours and hours.
Pontificating on platitudes about philosophy.
Those are big words.
Yeah,
she was a professor.
What about this? What about this idea? See how I brought that back?
Yeah.
It's called a comeback.
Well, you were in radio.
So what about this idea? We're going to do yoga mats for farmers, and then you'll have somebody say, "I grew up on a farm. I know all the people down in Worthington." Then you're going to have somebody say, "I'll write you the website," and pretty soon you have a team, right? And you'll never have that again in your life.
That's right. And you also might have someone who's willing to say, that's a stupid fucking idea.
Yeah,
which is fine too.
Well, there go the 14-year-olds. We'll have to bleep that one out of post.
Oh, no, we're explicit. It says explicit content. Yeah, we can't. We don't have a single 14-year-old.
Which is actually super attractive to the 14-year-olds.
Right? That might get us our first 14-year-old. That's weird. No, the other thing. Okay, so kids. Let's college, younger, it doesn't matter. Full of potential, right? And we as older people, look at that and we're like, oh yeah, remember when I used to have potential and all that? We all did fine. One of the, I'm not sure how to address the racial inequities that we have, but what I always come back to with it is, how much wasted potential are we going to just leave out there by not including people? Like, think of the ideas that have died because we just didn't give them a voice, a place to speak and do all of this stuff.
And also the generational effect of that, because it's
so
like,
miserable.
That's why we ask you, your kids are going to become entrepreneurs. One of them already has, right?
Or maybe they don't want to.
They don't want to, but they know it, right? But because it's passed down to the generation, they've seen it.
Yeah, it's the role model and the mentorship that you receive. It's hard to break out of the mold. It's hard to do what you don't know how to do. And so I grew up with an entrepreneurial father, and I saw him, give up his pension, give up his very safe, comfortable life, and buy this newfangled thing called an FM radio station. and turn it country music in 1979. Like,
Oh, that's when country was good.
I
loved the old.
it was the first FM country. FM radios weren't available in cars.
Yeah.
Back then. I mean, just talk about taking
That was a
risks.
cool thing, actually.
And watching him get involved in his community and watching him lean into his business and the lean years and the farm crisis and all those things that happened along the way. At no point in my life, if you'd known me in high school, you would have said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'd say I'd want to run my own radio station.
Yeah.
And now the problem is I sold it by the time I was 35. So
Yeah, but you did
I don't
it.
think it's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, you did it for as long as it made sense for you to do it.
but I don't have a podcast yet. So,
Wow.
Well.
maybe I scratched that itch early enough when I was young.
Let me tell you how easy it is to start one of these things. Don't worry, everyone else
Really,
has one.
you don't actually have to be talented.
You can
Or
just
knowledgeable.
Say, I got it. Yes.
Funny, because we're not.
So I think the most encouraging words I can give is when we say, so what about this idea? Be enthusiastic when you hear an idea.
I completely agree.
And kind of take that book out of comedy stand up. The yes and. You want to
Improv.
You want to find yourself surrounded by yes and people who don't say no but or no because.
Oh, is that okay? I get where that.
So yes and.
You've never done improv?
No, I've never done.
Oh my
you should
gosh,
get-
Sam, you'd be
Yeah.
so good at it.
Well, get Denzel, get the folks at Brave New Workshop as guests. I bring in guest speakers from Brave New Workshop to speak to my entrepreneurship classes.
Yeah,
we do.
yeah.
We have done that too. With executives, bring in improv people because it's about creating community of support, right? The yes and is like I have no idea what Mike is about to say, and I say yes and
I worked at a boys camp for 20 years almost. Like I was constantly
You get that.
improving. I was entertaining groups of people for 20 years all summer long. So I get that I understand it all. But no, I wouldn't think and comedians always drove me nuts. Not that improv is comedy, but it is in the same realm. But they always drove me nuts because every comedian I ever knew was testing material on me constantly and had to be the funniest person in the room. And I'm like, you don't always need to make a joke. Yeah, we could talk about something serious for a moment too. But anyway,
and then you riff from there, right? So you want to have them build their idea. It can do this, and it can do this, and it could be this, and it could be that.
I love that. That's that catalyst we were talking about before.
But you also need somebody in their life to play the role of coach.
Yeah.
And the coach is going to be the one that pushes them towards execution. So there's so many great ideas that have never been acted on.
Yeah, make action.
And the first reason we can dispel, your idea is not precious, your idea is not unique. And if it is so precious that all you have to do is tell it to somebody and they can steal your idea, it ain't much of an idea.
Yeah, right. The fear of having your idea stolen is.
If you have an idea, tell it to everybody.
Yep.
You have to be constantly selling it and pitching it and talking about it. And if somebody steals your idea and builds it faster than you, then they deserve it.
No one's going to champion an idea. This is what I've decided. No one's going to champion an idea that's so precious to you because it's not precious to them. Whether they like it or don't like it, they might incorporate some part of it. But when you've got an idea that you want to bring forward, it's like knowing that it's 10 years to overnight successdom, right? No one's going to spend 10 years overnight successdom. I said it so well.
It's there's so many close words to other words in that.
I liked it.
Successdom.
So overnight successdom. Anyway, honestly, this is what I see in people because once you start down the entrepreneurial path, I'm sure you both have had this happen. People will say, "Oh, well, I'm not really strong enough to do this, but what about this idea?" And they'll tell you something, and there's moments where I always try and hear them out and get the full thing because you can't actually do a 30-second elevator pitch on most ideas. Yeah. But you might get to the point where you're like, no, don't do that. It's not a good idea. You're never going to make a dime off of that, and here's why.
You'll also hear this one, and there was a time there. So once Minnesota Cars kind of hit that 50 dealer to 100 dealer mark, like we had pretty much every dealer in southern Minnesota pretty quick. How many people would come up to me? That was my idea.
Oh, for sure.
I had that idea before you had that idea. I'm like, everybody had this idea before I had this idea. Putting cars on the internet was not a unique, precious gem.
So what was the difference?
You just did it.
You just did it.
I did it. And also I happened to own radio stations, so I could advertise the hell out of it.
Right.
So,
but you did.
I wasn't the first person in southern Minnesota to do this.
You mean you created your own medium for getting messages out?
Yeah,
where people talked and then the message got out to people.
But it also
sold something as a result.
It also limited my vision. So 2020 hindsight is because I defined myself really where I owned radio stations, North Iowa and southern Minnesota. I probably could have been much bigger, much faster. Twin Cities wasn't on my horizon back then. And my first employee quit, and her husband helped found and was general manager of Car Soup.
Okay.
And nothing untoward happened. There was no idea stealing. They saw an opportunity, and I wasn't doing anything to grab that opportunity.
Yep.
No blame to their family. They did a great thing and created a great product. And how stupid was I to say, hey, I'm going to work down here in southern Minnesota where there are 450,000 people living. Why should I go up to the metro where 3 million people live?
Yeah. Why would you want to break into a market like that?
Yeah.
Seems silly.
Crazy.
Yeah. So again,
I think that there's a lesson here.
I think there's
a really big lesson, and so it brings up all the other facets, the systemic influence on how someone becomes and continues to be an entrepreneur, building an idea, building a business, building that. And there's some tenacity there, right? There's some, I like to call it stupid belief in your idea, right? Like
I think that's
you
fair.
have to be able to cut the noise out of, really being sure that your idea, make sure that you're not faking it till you make it completely in the business.
I hate fake it till you make it, by the way. I hate it. It really
I'm so glad
bothers
that
me.
you interjected with that comment.
I just hate it. No, I hate it when people say that though, because it's like, well, I don't think most serious entrepreneurs are faking anything. They're like fucking nuts.
Well,
They're nuts about their idea.
So I'll put an asterisk on that. I don't think they fake their core value proposition.
Right.
They fake things like accounting and billing and
Yeah, I mean, it's imposter syndrome. In a way, you have to kind of get your head out of feeling like you are not worthy enough to do this business by just doing the business, even though you don't think you're worthy of it.
Yeah, it's always plagued me. I'm with you.
So
yeah,
we're going to work on that.
This is different from the Wizard of Oz protocol, which is in your early days, you don't need to automate anything. So, for example, we had car dealers who still wanted to be fax leads. So people would come to the website and they'd see the blue Oldsmobile they wanted to buy, and they'd fill out the web form. Well, the car dealer didn't have email in 1997.
Yeah, I remember.
So they wanted us to fax it to them. So rather than building a telefax, computer interface, which would have required tens of thousands of dollars at that time.
Yeah.
My office manager, my part-time office manager, would take the stack and put them in the fax machine and fax them one at a time. Groupon started the same way. So there was no automated thing behind Groupon. You bought a Groupon, somebody went and made a PDF and sent it to you.
Yeah.
So fake it till you make it. I think it sounds crass. It sounds like they're not really delivering value, and I don't.
I can understand it in that
That's not what it really.
But
is.
I like your point of view that it has to do with more of the get up on stage and sound like an expert. Don't let your own self-doubts take you down.
Where it drives me
Sound
nuts,
like the best of you.
Yeah.
Sound like the best of you, and not
so you're projecting
your biggest
positivity is what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're thinking of that as faking it till you make it.
It's I sit here with two men, so you're going to have to listen to this with an open ear, because this is oftentimes the difference between men and women, right? Men will puff up their chest, right?
Totally.
And I'm stronger than you. And I'm telling you, every single one of those men, I don't care what they have done in the gym, are thinking to themselves, well, what if I'm not? What if I'm not fast enough? What if I'm not whatever? They're thinking that, but they're not showing that they're thinking that. Right? Women will be like, woo, they will allow you to see every piece of them that is afraid of that fight.
Yeah.
And often is the difference.
Can I offer a little insight? Anyway, Mike, you want to just...
So I'd like to broaden that conversation, because I think you brought up some gender stereotyping and gender behavior.
Which is good.
And now we can extend that to cross-cultural. So what you brought about immigrant culture, not all cultures see entrepreneurship the same way. And even going to school in Australia, and I thought Australia and America were virtually identical. They have the tall poppy syndrome down there. And so, the tall poppy gets cut first.
I don't know what that means. I need it.
So that's what it means. The tallest poppy in the field is the one that gets cut first.
Oh, so don't shine?
Exactly. Their whole culture. And, I come down and, part of 36 people, and all of them made more money than me, and all of them were smarter than me and more successful than me. But I had that puff out your chest American entrepreneurship vibe, and it did not play well enough.
Did they cut your poppy, Mike?
They at every chance they could.
Every chance they could, they cut your poppy.
And I want to,
Well, they all
just a different mindset.
They're
right?
all felons, right? That's
oh my
how
God,
Australia
that
started.
is such an old... I mean,
it's the truth of it. It was the island of felons from
But we're
England.
talking a long time ago.
Culture,
do not paint all
culture
Australia.
persists.
We lost Australia. They are not sponsoring our show anymore.
I don't care.
Views expressed by the hosts of this show do not necessarily reflect those of its guests.
No, I don't care.
Okay, I want
love you,
to all my Australian friends.
I love you, Australia.
I know. They're wonderful. I want to offer one more side to what you said about men, about the stereo, thinking about men as stereotypically chest puffing dudes, right? It's very true. I've interviewed men and women for different positions. The women way overqualified. Generally speaking, they come in and they're like, I'm not sure I'm right for this, right? The men underqualified and they're like, I know I'm right for this.
I can do it.
But I do want to say this. You alluded to the idea that every one of those men still has self-doubt, right? And I would offer up, I would say this. There are men out there who have no self-doubt about anything. They are just that arrogant. They are just that wildly obsessed with themselves that they really, truly do believe that they are the best thing that ever happened.
Do you think, and now we're diving into this, do you think that is typical, or is that more of a mental illness?
No, I think it's somewhat atypical. But I know I've run into
narcissism in general.
Yeah, it could be a medical diagnosis.
Yes,
I did say, I was talking to a friend of mine about entrepreneurship. I'm not sure I'm confident enough to do what I used to do in my 20s and 30s. Right, so I've become older. I've become jaded. I've become learned. I now know how to read a balance sheet, the P&L, and all these things that I didn't.
So
know
the risks
then.
you took back then,
right.
You might not take.
Yeah, you're like, what the hell was I doing? Starting, 4 internet companies. It was online jobs that could have probably grown up to be something. Online real estate, that was a pretty good idea.
Definitely.
What about that idea? And so it was jobs, classified, and jobs classified. Oh, and
cars,
real estate.
And real estate.
And
yeah.
So I had homesaroundhere.com. I had minnesotatowork.com. I had minnesotaforsale.com. And I had traffic on all these. But I couldn't make a buck.
Do you still own those URLs?
No, I sold them off a long time ago.
Well, we we should wrap up. I don't want to.
I don't want to.
But I really have to do this because we're going to have another PhD, or not a PhD. We're going to have another professor.
Someday get a real PhD.
We're going to have someone with a PhD.
Who knows what they're talking about.
Yes, and I already love that person. I'm sure they're great. They're going to be more dry. I'm thinking they're probably going to be a little more dry and unfun. But so I have to ask this question because it's a theme that I've brought up before. I'll bring it up again. I think that entrepreneurship training, one of the things that should happen, I used to guide canoe trips into the Arctic. And you plan for this trip, you get your team together, and then, like in the case of the longest ones, they fly out on a float plane, they put you down somewhere, and you got to get to the end. And you try not to kill anyone along the way. You try not to die or lose the food or whatever, but I think that there should be like as much as school is cool and kids should go to school. I think I could take someone on an Arctic canoe trip and have them learn more about entrepreneurship in 3 weeks because you just have to get up each day and move and do stuff and keep at it.
So Steve Spruth, who I took over for, and rest in peace, is such a beautiful man. He used to teach innovation and entrepreneurship by leading a trip to Boundary Waters.
No shit.
Yeah, so he had that course, and
so I'm not that far off.
You're not that far off. Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson with the face.
This goes back to Napoleon.
Mike Tyson.
I love it.
Mike Tyson stole this line from Napoleon.
Okay.
So basically, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? So that's a truism. And Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think that's what we can do as entrepreneurship teachers is give them a safe place to get punched in the face.
Yeah, because getting punched in the face,
you're going to be in a safe place. You're going to be able to try to sell something to somebody. You're going to have a team around you. Worst thing that's going to happen is you get a B. Like, this is a really safe place.
It is.
And there's an unsafe nature to entrepreneurship. And that's, I've not in 3,500 miles or whatever it is of canoeing with kids, I've not let a single kid die. A couple of them have come pretty close. I've probably come pretty close, but they lived through it. In entrepreneurship, man, it feels risky to do things, but it is just like those canoe trips. Like when you're on them, you don't like it. It sucks. It feels really. You wake up every day and you're like, oh man,
but then you go back out.
But you want to do it again because when you get to the end, you're like, damn it, I don't know. Like 2 weeks later, you're telling your friends like, yeah, it was a great journey.
Yeah.
And
I think if I look back on all my entrepreneurial journeys, and again, they're not done. I bought 3 buildings in partnerships in the past 6 months. Like, this is just what we do. You learn the value of friends. You learn the value of partnerships. You learn when partnerships go bad. I've been through a few of those.
Yeah, we all have.
You prepare for the camping trip, but
sometimes.
Every Boundary Waters trip is great until the first.
Oh,
I love that punching thing. Although, I mean, it's a bit rough. It's a bit male. But I would say the thing is, I think what throws entrepreneurs off is that they don't expect to be punched and they feel like someone just came up and cocked them without them knowing. And the idea is, as you said, expect the punch, be ready for it.
But what about this idea? Podcast called Get the Punch Out of the Way. Just go on and get punched.
Take it in the face.
You said that.
So I will tell you, one of my favorite entrepreneurship teachers at the U of M, when he taught this course, I think he broke everybody into small groups, and this was like at 10 o'clock in the morning, and he gave every team like $100 in an envelope, and he said, whoever makes the most money wins.
Like by the end of the day, or
by the end of the day, we're going to meet at Grandma's for a hamburger at 9 o'clock. Go. And he had very few rules. Like, you can you could borrow a grill, but you got to pay for the charcoal.
Right.
And,
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
and just as a kind of an icebreaker, we have class the rest of the day. Well, that sucks. You go.
I kind of like
Your
this.
first punch in the face.
So it was to get over that hurdle of just go do something, try something.
Do it, move,
And then
make it happen.
But little Sally in the back was like, "Man, I'm just going to hold on to the $100, and then might win." For
Yeah.
I came back with $100. You
I
all
invested
lost
in a T-bill. I made 0.001 cents.
No, that's a good lesson.
Yeah,
it's
I
just
like
phase
it.
one.
I like it.
I think those are the kind of safe place. We try to teach about velocity, not about success. So whether or not your idea that you develop in 12 or 14 weeks makes a lot of money, that's not really the hurdle of success. It's how fast did you get to the learning. One of my favorite entrepreneurship students who I took down to Cuba, he had this really see the light kind of moment down there, and we had just met with this amazing entrepreneur, and he hadn't been a great student until then. He was kind of the, go to the bathroom and not come back to class, in the back of the class, a lot of absences, probably pulling a C- before we went to Cuba. And so as I got to know him better, it turns out he made $80,000 selling an item. So there was a hip hop song, not a culture that I know much about, that mentioned a specific product. He found a dropship manufacturer that would make the product with these words on it. He advertised on Instagram and Facebook, and he played that funnel and down through a Shopify cart, and he made $80,000. And I'm like, I said, that's like capstone entrepreneurship.
That's
like why
you could go on Shark Tank with that kind of income.
But in his mind, that wasn't entrepreneurship.
That's fun.
And again, he was an immigrant. He was a second generation immigrant from Somalia, and for some reason, like he and his friends, they didn't
equate that with entrepreneurship.
And just the look on his face, I said, that's good. Like, write that up. Like, just write that up and present that.
So I can give you a grade.
Exactly. And I've kept in contact with this student. It's been wonderful to kind of see what he's been doing since he graduated. And he's tried more and more of these kind of things, and some with success and some with failure.
Yeah. But sometimes you get punched in the face.
But so I think there are a lot.
We should have called it a podcast. Sometimes you get punched in the face.
Well, I really appreciate being here. I love this idea. I love the idea of this podcast.
I reached out to you completely cold. Yeah. You could have come in here and been the biggest weirdo we ever met. I had no idea.
Turns out you're a shiny star.
only awesome. a slight weirdo.
No.
I do know which end of the microphone to talk into. That's probably
It's more than that. I would, if we're doing this for any reason at all, it's so that someone can listen to it and understand a little bit better why they are the person who is so weird that they always want to do something new and all of that. You bring it. You brought it home. You did it.
Well, thanks for calling me weird. That was
you're like
very
a middle-aged white guy.
Yeah.
We could have ignored you.
I know. I've had so much fun in my life. I tell you, one of the great blessings is this turnabout in my family. My wife, we've been together 40 years, and she's put up with all my entrepreneurial over the years.
That's rough.
She's just done a wonderful job. And now to see her not only flourish in business, but absolutely kick my butt at it.
Oh, that's great.
Is just absolutely wonderful.
Yes. Next time you come on, let's dig into that. I want to know.
Yeah.
Like, what was it?
And I will say this, that, I use podcasts as an example of a tough business plan because nobody listens to the first podcast.
No one makes money off of it easily either.
You can't get to 10,000 until you have that first one. So
I know, right?
I'm glad that I'm the third on the journey.
We haven't even launched this stuff yet. No, we've been at this long. I know what I'm doing well enough to know that this is going to be successful. Because of people like you. And please introduce us to more people who are They don't have to be the world's most successful people. They can be people who got punched really hard in the face. I want to hear from them too.
Yeah, because it's great to hear those stories as an entrepreneur. Like, oh, okay, it's not just me.
I'm personally tired of listening to the ones that are just like, oh, I'm CEO of the largest company there ever was. Maybe didn't even found that. Like, why am I listening to entrepreneurial advice?
Because he went to Harvard,
I know.
and he learned about building a business.
And nothing in it means anything to me. I'm like, I'm just trying to build a little business here. You know?
The ones who start and fail and start. I went to a guest speaker, the guy who started Tyson, the turkey Tyson.
Oh, yeah.
Company. And it's like,
Jesus,
so I did
how
this,
long ago
and
was that?
then I did this, and
Tyson Foods.
And pretty soon I had 40,000 turkeys, and then they all died. So I went to the bank and borrowed some more money, and then I built this, and then I had 150,000 turkeys, and then they all died. But the third time,
oh no,
it felt like the Monty Python.
I mean, I feel like
castle burned down.
Yeah, I feel like Tyson's been around forever. That's a relatively
that was
new company.
before Hormel bought them.
No shit.
So probably, I'm an old guy now.
Oh, I mean,
But
not far behind.
You know, I think finding those entrepreneurs that they've had successes, but they also aren't shy about talking about their punches in the face along the way, and the pivots, and you know, that persevere or pivot is that's a tough point to be at when it's just not working. Like you're below cash flow, and I've been there for quite a few businesses where, you know, do I keep making, you know, writing checks every month into a business is not fun.
Oh, I did it.
And how long do you do that for? And you also, I love my employees. I've had this great, wonderful privilege to having employed hundreds of people over my life, and that's a big responsibility.
It is.
It's a huge responsibility.
And treating them well and treating them with respect. And I will say that, you know, my father passed away about 5 or 6 years ago. And remember, we sold the radio stations in 2000. So 16 years had gone by since these people worked for my dad. And every single person who worked for my dad showed up to the funeral, except for 2. Yeah. Because they were on the air.
Oh,
that's pretty impressive.
That was really cool.
Well, you learned leadership from him, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
So, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, Mike, really, really a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
You good? You want to say goodbye to our audience? No?
I just have so much more to say, and there's no more time.
Well, what about this idea?
I know, right?
Good night, everyone.
I'll say goodbye. Thanks, everybody.
We'll be back.
Wait, we got to say,
thanks, Twin Ignition.
Twin Ignition. Like I think we should say something like coming to you from the Twin Ignition garage.
We'll throw some commercial in there. We'll give them a little shout out.
All right.
Live on tape from Twin Cities Ignition.
That's right.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Cheers.
Don't cry. It's over.
Oh, you did it. You made it to the very end of the show. You know what you can do to help us? What can they do to help us? They can tell their friends how awesome this show is.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
You know what else? And I don't know if people know this or don't know this, but like if you found us and you see us on socials somewhere, just hit repost or share it with your community.
Share, repost, follow. Isn't there a follow option?
Yeah,
of some
follow,
kind?
subscribe. We're not going to charge you anything.
No.
Just hit the subscribe button.
No,
It's
we
not gonna
just
hurt
need
you.
to create a community around entrepreneurism and how the real shit happens.
I like it. Well, because we're real. You said it in the intro.
Real.
We talk real. No, seriously, tell your friends. What a great show. Oh my gosh, these people are doing the best work ever. Yeah, right?
That's what you should say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just come back. Have fun with us. We love this.
We'll have someone, we'll interview someone cool next week too.
Someone completely different.
Yeah, from prison. Thanks.
We always have to have that.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.